Erev Tov. Good evening, everybody. So before we get into any specific topic, I just want to go over what is the objective. This so-called session is meant to be optional. It's outside the Seder, and it's really an experiment because it's up to you. You know, you can show up or not show up. The goal that we intended, and I intended, was that we all went to yeshiva. We learned a lot of chokhmah, a lot of wisdom, a lot of ideas. But many people don't have what's called chokhmas hachayim. You know what that means? It's a yes or no question. Okay. Chokhmas hachayim, which means common sense, al pi Torah, al pi chassidus. So we thought that it would be good to have interaction where you take Torah and chassidus and all its ideas and theories and apply it to real life situations. It was not meant to be only shalom bayis, even though that's a key and important component, but you're being trained and you're learning, and hopefully one day you're going to be somewhere a rov, a mashpia, a mashliach, or even whatever it is that you end up doing. You want to be able to apply Torah and chassidus to real life situations. And that happens to be something that's lacking. I can tell you without names, many shluchim who have a real problem with that. Some of them are big lumdim and even ge'enim, but they don't know how to talk to people about whether it's shalom bayis issues or other issues. So we felt that this would be a form of a coming together and doing that exactly. That's why we called Hadrocho ve'etzes al pi chassidus. Any topic can be addressed. You all know I do Sunday night. I cover everything. So I have plenty to talk about. It's not like there's lacking topics. But since this is not a session of just for the Curly Galite here, so I wanted it to be something that you guys are interested in. Now, I understand very well not everybody wants to talk about the personal. I'm not saying it has to be your personal issues. It has to be, but in general, something that it is. So I have in my mind a bunch of topics I want to address. We started with shalom bayis. I moved over next to the inyan of shlichus. How do you choose a career, so to speak? What are you going to do with your life? How to discuss it with your spouse, how to communications. And then we did one before Hanukkah, we did about lessons from Hanukkah. And last week I dealt with how do you deal with controversial issues. I addressed specifically Mashiach. So it's not just random. Since I didn't really hear from you, a few things I did hear, what you'd like me to talk about. So I'm just choosing my own. If you want me to talk about anything, you just have to tell me. You don't have to tell it to me now. You could write it to me a text. It could be anonymous, etc. But that's the purpose of this. So I assume you're adults. You're not babies. I have to tell you, in kindergarten, you don't ask the student what they want to learn. So I'm hoping that at some point you'll tell me some things you want to address. It doesn't have to be, again, shalom bayis. It doesn't have to even be sensitive issues. It's issues that I think we all need, in how to deal with issues in life. At the end of the day, you are trained to be neiris lahayir. Yetzel Melchem is Beis David. People are going to go out and be able to be proactive on the offense to teach people about life, al pi Torah. And people want to see that you're in touch. They don't want to see a person who's lives in Afshata or is not in touch with realities on the ground. And look at the Rebbe, with all the sichos and maimorim, which is all the geinus and all the lamdus and all the primius HaTorah, nigla Torah. At the end of the day, the Rebbe spent hours and hours yichidus. Look at the Igris Kedus. That's personal advice. Most of the Igris, a lot of it is Lamdus also. But much of it is really Hadrocho. And of course, the Alter Rebbe, we don't need more than Likutei Amorim Tanya, is clearly Likutei Eitzes. It's not, the Alter Rebbe does not lay out the Yeshedus of Chassidus Chabad in Likutei Amorim. That you need to go to Likutei Torah and the Maimorim and Torah so much Shari Yuchad V'Amunah. Likutei Amorim was meant to give Hadrocho al pi Chassidus and al pi Torah. So that's what I feel this should be the objective here. But I'd love to hear your feedback, and I'm not demanding it, but it would be a lot helpful. So what I was going to do today, to be honest, was I was going to continue dealing with controversial topics, because whether you're dealing with family members or you're dealing with strangers, whoever it is, one of the hardest things that I find where a lot of mistakes are made is when it comes to addressing a controversial topic like Mashiach. And last week I said some controversial things actually here, because I wanted to really, how do you address, how does a Torah address an issue? So I wanted to just continue on that theme. So I'll do that. But again, you're here. You want me to talk about anything? I'll be happy to do it. Just let me know what it is. And if you need to be anonymous, it's easy to send a text, create an email address that's fake, that doesn't have a name, and just send me an email if you want. There's many ways to do it. I also offered, if you want to write it down on a note, you leave it up front here somewhere, or send it to me. I'll be happy to look at it as well. There's nothing to, if it's here we go. So someone be in touch with someone in the faculty about the lights, at least Tuesday night, I feel like I'm unwanted when all the lights go out on me.
It's too hard for them.
Huh? It's too hard
for them. They're reactive every night.
They have to do it every night. Every night you're out of here by 5:30, right? More or less. Okay, fine. So I wanted to continue. Does anybody want to comment now on anything? You want to say anything? You want to suggest anything? I don't have to address it tonight. There's next week, etc. Or you're all going to be very quiet. Okay.
I'll send you a text.
Good. What do you say? What do you want?
Is it current vaccination controversy?
We could talk about that too. But
current versus old and why some.
Yeah. Look, as I mentioned a number of times, and I think it's good to repeat again and again, there's a difference between addressing facts and theories, facts and information rather, and data, and methodology. When you learn Gemara, you can learn Gemara you get to know the facts. These are Hilchas Shabbos, Hilchas Mikvoyos, Hilchas Nida, Hilchas Shchita, whatever it may be. But when you really master learning Torah, if you could master it, but Kavyochel, you're learning methodology. The Torah has a method. There's a method. Like every morning we say, Yud Gimel Midrash HaTorah Nidreshes Behem. That's methodology. Midrash HaTorah Nidreshes Behem is not facts. Like, what's kosher, what's not kosher. It's the method. How do you learn something out of a pasuk? Kal v'chemer, Gzeira Shava, Binyanav, etc. That's a methodololy. And the Eibishter wanted us not just to have Yedias, method. One of the biggest things I personally learned from the Rebbe is methodology, how he addressed the problem, not what the answer was to a question. So the real Even HaBeichen is, if I presented to you a challenge, a question, how would you deal with it? That would be a sign that you've learned methodology, not just that I give you the answer or someone gives you the answer. So that's a big part of what I'm doing here. Even though I haven't stated it explicitly, I'm stating it now. It's about the method. How do you approach? I mentioned last week, by Mashiach. Before you even get to the topic, how does a Torah approach something? The first thing is not approach it in a personal way. Torah is not up to us personally what we decide that the Torah says. Punkt verkehrt. The Eibishter tells us what he wants, not we tell the Eibishter, or we'd say what you can use your seichel to understand what the Eibishter wants. And there's klolim and midas and so on and methodologies. But the first thing is everything's miyusad on Torah. And when you do that, you actually diffuse and you're able to preempt a lot of issues. And this is true across the board. So I'm going to share with you a story, which is it's going to be interesting. I spoke for a group of what they call LBGTQ, and I don't know, every day they have new letters. So different types of people. I don't know if you're familiar with this. What means LBGTQ? You know what that is? LBGT? Okay. Well, because it's Taka Baraisa Bara'almi, you look and tell you if you heard about it. Okay. This is called the gay community. It's a real issue in life today. It's inevitable that you're not going to face this issue some point, whether it's a family member or it's a stranger or someone's going to ask how you deal with this. This question is posed to me literally, probably on a weekly basis. I hear from someone, what do I do? How do you address this issue? You could simply go to the pasuk in Parshas Achrei and just exactly Teyevahi, and then say Meishumas and whatever the pasuk says. But obviously, that's not the approach. I think everyone with a little meyach bekatkote knows that's not the approach that you take. Like the Rebbe wrote to Rabbi Volpo when he was talking about the Rebbe being Mashiach, he says, but it's a fact. So the Rebbe says it's also a fact that a person is Mechal Shabbos is Chayav Skila. Are you going to your Gvirim who give you money on Mechal Shabbos and tell them that they're Chayav Skila and you'll be the first one online to stone them when Mashiach comes? You don't tell them that, even though it's a fact. In other words, there's more than just facts. There's also an approach, how you present Torah. So I was invited to a base called a shul, called Beis Simchas Torah in Greenwich Village. Yeah, but they Simchas Torah call Hashanah Kula. Yeah, that's how it is. They have shuls, synagogues. Some are called Avasachim. There's a house of David and Jonathan, David and Yehuda. They have all kinds of names for their shuls. Okay. Since they're not tzaddikim gemurim like us, right? So since I deal with a lot of people, so I dealt here as well with people, and one of them invited me. One of the people in the shul said, "Would you come speak for us?" So I said to him, "What's the point? It'll just be a very tense situation because I'm coming as a Torah person. I'm not coming here to do psychology and therapy. I have to present what the Torah says, and that's going to offend people because they're not ready necessarily to accept. And I'm not criticizing them, but how is this going to be a pleasant interaction here? It'll just be very tense and very like a hostile audience." He says, "No, I trust that you'll do a great job. I know you well. I love your classes." He's a person, he calls himself gay, and so on. So I thought about it. And I said, look, if your community is welcoming me and they want me to come and speak, I'll come and speak. But it has to be baratz. I'm not coming here because you like me to speak and everybody else is not. It has to be pleasant. I'm not coming to a place where I'm not wanted, so to speak. He says, look, some people are not going to perhaps like everything you say, but I think we'll all learn from it. That was basically what he said. So I said, you know what? Okay, I'll come. This is where you have to open your mind to a new world. This is not Crown Heights, Kingston Avenue. This is what I'm trying to teach you, how you speak to gay people. There's a way to speak. You'll be sitting on a plane and you put on tefillin on a Jew, and then I'll say to you, by the way, you know I'm gay. What are you going to say? How do you speak to this person? Do you have anything to say or everything shuts down because you don't know what to say? I assure you most people don't know what to say because this comes in. Chil Shabbos can be just a big an Aveda. There's a lot of Chiyuv, Asuri Kodesh and others. But for some reason, gay disturbs religious people more than other Avedas. So you have to be able to distinguish, is it because of Torah or is it because of our own cultural resistance? I'm going to be speaking about this a bit. That's exactly why I'm talking about this topic, because the goal here is I'm not coming here to tell you we're not changing what the Torah says. It's a question of addressing the issue, how you talk about it. Look, the frum world in general has difficulty talking to a secular person because they see the secular person as, the people have big issue when the Rebbe said miftzat film. You look in the Sfarim, it's not a guf noki, etc., etc. So how do you put on film? I mean, the Rebbe explained it all, and today we understand. But there were questions, and even today there are questions. How do you deal? Let's say you have a Chabad house, and people drive to you Friday night to dinner. You know they're driving. Are you allowed to invite them? I'm not talking about that we don't look at it and we ignore it. But is there a shitta here, or it's everything goes? Whatever you want, you do. Do you take non-Jewish children whose mothers were converted by conservative rabbis? Do you accept these children in your preschool? I'm going to give you a whole bunch of questions that are very complicated. And shluchim don't have full hadrocho in this regard. I'm not talking about that right now. I'll address those as well. These are all going to come up. I'm telling you. We live in a world, you have to realize, we live in a world, Rahman al-Islam, that has intermarriage in some cities over 80%. 8 out of 10 Jews are intermarried. The majority, not the miyut. You have people, assimilation that goes through the roof. I mean, I don't know how aware you are. So these are all in. By the Rebbe's perspective, from the Torah perspective, Chassidus, these are all in. What do you do with this? And you're not going to change it overnight. You're talking about millions of people. So I want to address this issue because to me, I'm not addressing per se the gay issue. I'm really addressing the issue. How do you talk about something where you're someone who completely has different beliefs than you do, in a way that's not just going to be zichuk and machlekes. That's really what I want to approach it, a methodology. And I'll share with you in a minute, yeah?
Is that you're asking, not talking about whether you should, not talking, what will you speak to them, isn't going to them, acknowledging that it's as a community, isn't that a problem?
I mean, let me ask you a question. When a Chabad house gives an aliyah to the biggest gvir who happens to be gay, is that, one second, I asked you a question. Would you call that an endorsement of,
No.
Why?
Because you're not giving him the aliyah for his gayness, you're giving him the aliyah for the donation.
Oh, so then it's mutter. And if they gave me a donation, then it's fine?
So
They did pay me for the talk.
that's what I'm saying. No, you going.
I asked you a question. No, tell me the difference. Why, if you give aliyahs to people and you give them all kinds of kibbudim? Because what?
You get it's a halachic question whether it's that or maybe.
No, but why don't you ask the same question that you're asking me? Is it a kiddush Hashem? Is it?
I'm not asking Kiddush Hashem. I'm asking you're acknowledging that.
What am I acknowledging? I'm speaking to Jews who happen to be in a community. And let's say they were on a beach when people go and do mitzvot film and not mitzvah places. How about that? Aren't you acknowledging? I mean, you're asking, why is this an issue more than going to a place that's a mokim poritz, but you're going to meet Jews? Standing in Manhattan in summer months is not exactly very halachic. Why is, explain that to me. You have an answer? I've spoken in thousands of places. Going to speak somewhere is not an endorsement. As a matter of fact, it's the opposite. They're endorsing me because they're bringing me there.
Conservative or Reform temple?
Al pi halacha, there are questions. Have I spoken in places like that? And some, yes, I have spoken in some places.
Isn't it the same?
But I don't want to go off. We'll talk about that another week. Isn't what the same?
Isn't it? I mean,
But that's a whole different question. That's because are you allowed to go into a place that is kafir be'iker in a shul that desecrates? It's a different question. That's nothing to do with gay or not gay. Are you allowed to go to a shul where a rave of the community, it's a frum shul, but they all are machal Shabbos? I mean, you know, that's... Anyway,
as a show. They are a show as gay people show.
Anyway, I do not have an issue with doing what I did. I stand by it. Whether you want to do it or not is your call. I would suggest if you're invited to a place like that, you should go to your Rav and ask him. I'm not your Rav, but I'm saying you should.
I'm asking you, no.
For me, it wasn't an issue. Huh?
You asked or you that's not.
Why don't you ask me if I ask about other things that, I do a lot of things.
We're talking about it, so I was curious.
No, I didn't ask because I relied on my own ideas and knowledge in this case. And that's that. I wasn't representing anyone except myself. I didn't represent Chabad. I didn't represent any Rabbonim. Simon Jacobson, an author for a meaningful life, is speaking in a community. You know how many communities I've spoken that are completely secular? I mean, what are you asking me? I understand. I've spoken to Christians. I've spoken to thousands of Christians. Is that all right?
This is not. Speaking to I wouldn't compare them to.
Why? Apiteidic Christianity is shituf is avodah zarah. No, for me to be there.
And that's why I'm not talking about you being there. That was my question. My question is like you going there, you are giving a knowledge to people that their whole existence as a community.
I've never heard such a thing. So if you go if you go to a campus and you're coming to teach Chassidus, you're giving an endorsement to the campus. Is that correct? Why is that different? I don't understand your logic. Why?
I need to rephrase and I'll ask you.
No, but I'm saying, does that bother you? That people go on the campus is pritzis, the whole campus. It does not represent Torah. You're going, not only are you going to speak, you establish all Chabad house there. Why is that?
I just can't rephrase. I need to think about it.
Okay, well, ask any Rav. I don't see the difference. Because if you're going there, you could either answer that you're going to be mashpia, which is exactly what I did, or you could say you're allowed to do it. I don't really see the issue going to speak and teach Jews, or even non-Jews for that matter. Torah, what God wants of us, is not an endorsement of the people you're speaking to. I don't even know why the Havamim even. So, bottom line is this. So I came to this audience. There were over 500-600 people there. They were big elam. And let me tell you exactly what happened. Here's a way, an approach, which again is methodology. How do you deal with such an issue? And they wanted me to speak the Torah perspective on, basically on sexuality really, but specifically homosexuality. So I'm not going to give you my whole speech. I'm just going to give you the Roshi Prakim and the approach I took. So knowing very full well, I didn't go there to have a debate. I didn't even go there to persuade them. And I made that clear. I opened up, I said, look, I know it's a very strange evening we're going to have here. Here I am, what some of you would call an Orthodox rabbi, Chassidic rabbi, Chabad rabbi, whatever you want to call me. And I'm speaking to an audience here that has clearly part of a very specific community, which feels that the Orthodox world rejects you based on the verses in the Torah. So what am I doing here in the first place? Why am I here even? So I want to tell you, before I begin, I want to just share with you the following. That I'm here not to change your minds. I'm not here to change your lifestyle, whatever you've chosen or not chosen, or this is who you are, however you interpret it. I'm here as a Jew who is trained to think in terms of wherever you go, you want to bring light, and you want to bring guidance and clarity. The Torah is called Torah Er, which means it brings light, Hira B'chaim, and that we all can learn from the Torah. It's God's Torah. God created us, and he gave us a Torah, how best to live our lives. So I'm here to talk about that. And there may be some things you agree with, some things you may not agree with. You're right, you're full right. Again, I'm not coming to change anyone's mind or persuade anyone. And I'm just coming to speak in that fashion, and maybe we learn something from all of this. And then I said I want to begin in an intelligent way. Every conversation begins with what we call axioms. Muskolas l'shemus. So I want to share with you some of my axioms. You may not agree with them, but that's not the point of this evening. I mentioned this last week also on our last Tuesday night here, I'm saying that to you. So I'm going to share some of my axioms, and you may not agree, and we could talk about that another time, but every conversation has to have axioms. So here are my axioms. I stated, number one, I'm presenting an approach that's built on the following assumptions. Number one is that God created the universe. It's not here by accident. It didn't evolve through natural selection. The Eibishter, as it says in the beginning of Chumash, he created Bereshis bara Elokim Shemayim v'Haaretz, and that's number one. Number two, God therefore also created the world for a purpose. It's not by God says he has nothing to do, he's going to create a world. It's a tachlis habriya. La'avdo l'shamra, or v'asel l'migdash v'shachanti b'seicham, or lasas le'ez baradir v'tachtein. Whatever words you use, there's a purpose. How do we know what we human beings are created in order to be able to fulfill this purpose? You have to know what the purpose is. So you have to say the next assumption is that God communicated to the human race what he wants. Because had God created the world and with a purpose, but never tells us what the purpose is and how to fulfill the purpose, the whole purpose is defeated. So we call it this the Torah. The Torah is the blueprint that God gave us and said, this is how I want you to live your life to the best, to fulfill the purpose of your life and the purpose of all creation. So these are the first assumptions. Next assumptions. This God created the human being also, male and female. That's what it says. Zocher nekeva bara esam. In the divine image, Selam Elikim, Salmenu Kidmusenu, Zocher nekeva bara esam. And then at some point he split the Zocher nekeva into two, and that became what we call the genders, male, female. And because they were once one, and now they gravitate toward each other to become one again. And this is what's called in Torah a sacred marriage, kedushin. You have a hayul lebasar echad. It's basically bringing together two parts of one whole, what we call soulmates or plagufa, whatever the expression is. And that's all part of God's plan. Okay, so therefore, not only did God create the human being, he also created our sexuality. So who knows best what sexuality is? Only God, the creator. If you want to know who's the best person to go to, if you want to know a machine, a complex work of engineering, who do you go to? The engineer, the one who built the machine. And they give you an operator's manual that tells you how to use the machine in the best way. This is how I was presented, exactly in this tone. And again, I said, I'm going to be presenting like a professor, objectively, what the Torah says about all these matters. I'm not here to personalize it. It's nothing to do with my opinion, your opinion. This is what it says in the Torah. Now, you can either reject it, you can accept it, you can argue about it, but I'm presenting the best of my ability. And I saw there were a lot of people there I knew, not most I didn't know. And many of them were actually yeshiva boys and girls who at some point were in yeshiva. There were a lot of frum people there. Mostly not, but many frum. So I said all this, and I saw their faces. They were a little, disarmed, because they didn't expect this type of tone. Because I didn't come there to tell them they're Rishayim, they're going to burn in hell, etc. This is the tone I took. And I hope you understand what I'm trying to convey here. This is a method. This is not just talking an idea. Of course, I could have got up there and just start saying, here's what the Pasuk says, and here's what Chazal say, and Teresh Shabbat Pen, and what exactly does it mean to be gay, etc. What is the Isser? Is the Isser Bia, Kedarke, Shalek Kedarke, penetration, not penetration, etc. I don't mean to be so crude, but that's not where I went at all, obviously. I'm sure a Litvak or someone who just wanted to talk halacha would do that. I can move in a Pashut. He wouldn't have an audience. Who's interested? They're not interested in hearing someone's intricate halachas that we learn about these matters. So here was right away what I did was, and this was the goal, was to create a type of what's the word I want to use? A camaraderie that they should identify with me, and they assume me as a human being who's explaining something in a very pleasant tone. It may not be what they like, but the whole approach opened them up that they could listen at least. They did not agree with that. Trust me, at the end of the evening, no one changed their mind. I can tell you right now, I didn't expect anyone to change their mind. But they had, for the first time, a communication that was not about yelling at each other, and it wasn't just criticizing, and wasn't condescending. It was a communication. But I did not compromise one word of Torah or Halacha or Chassidus. You'll see, I didn't finish. I'm just giving you, this was set the tone. And I saw they were listening. Why were they listening? Because I began with Darkei Neyam, with Darkei Shalom. I wasn't personalizing. I didn't say, you're this, you're that. I didn't point fingers. We're talking an Inyan. Let's talk in Inyan, as we say. We don't have to become personal about it. That's the most important thing when you're dealing with controversy, because controversy lends itself to conflict. You hold this, I hold this. Like I spoke last week about Mashiach. It's become so personal, you can't have a conversation anymore. It was like the issue of with Trump, for example, pro-Trump and anti-Trump. You can't talk even to people. Everything is personalized. Everyone has their shittus and yandik. Anyway, let me continue what happened next. So that's what I said. So therefore, who's the man who knows sexuality better than anyone? The one who created it, God. And he created how to use your sexuality. These are my assumptions. So now let's talk about the issues on the table. That's what I went next. I said, so what did God tell us about sexuality? So I said, firstly, male and female. That's what it says. That's how he created us. Number two, God also told us what a sacred marriage is like. Like, what does that mean? Intimacy is a purely holy thing. It's the way God created human beings. Intimacy is not some man-made creation that we want to be intimate. God made that a man is attracted to a woman is attracted to a man. They want to be together in every possible way. So God told us how. There's a thing called kedushin, from the word sanctity. You have to sanctify it. There's a way under a chuppah, all the different tanoim, what makes a kedushin. That's called marriage. Now, there's many rules in that marriage between men and women. You can't just be with each other intimate all month long. There are times you could, there are times you can't. Let's say a man or a woman says, you know what? I have a taiva for another man or another woman. No, the Torah says no. And this is still heterosexuality. We're not even talking about homosexuality. Why not? Why can't I do whatever I like? Because there's a God, and God created the world. He created rules for men and women, no matter what type of relationship, and said, how is the best way to be a sexual human being and how best to exercise intimacy, etc. This was so far, again, nobody could jump on anything I said. So I said, so now let's talk about the issue at hand, which is, let's talk about homosexuality. The fact is, if a heterosexual, which means male and female, behave in a way that's hepach Torah, that's not according to Torah, they're also not going to the way God said to do it. And there are all kinds of different statements made about it, whether it's regarding a nida or regarding different methods and so on. There's halachas for this. So now with this context, obviously everything was much more pleasant. Not that, again, that they all agree with what I said. Then the next thing I said, before I continue, I want to just say the following. From my experience, talking about whether a chicken is kosher or not, everybody can listen to that because there's no personal agenda. But talking about relationships, any type of relationship is emotional. And when it comes to emotions, we all have our biases. We all have our prejudices. If, for example, you fall in love with someone, a man, let's say, falls in love with a woman, it's going to be very hard to tell that man or the woman, hey, the Torah says that's not acceptable. Why? Because they're already invested. Once you're emotionally invested, it's not easy to just say, to be objective. So let's be honest. Whatever I'm going to say now, I know is not going to be, none of us are. I'm also not objective. I'm coming from a certain point of view. But how do intelligent people speak when they're not objective? They acknowledge it. So I said, I'm acknowledging right now that I'm coming from that's why I wanted to state all the assumptions, all the axioms, that I'm not coming from an objective place per se. I'm coming from a place where I'm saying God created the world, God created human beings. So with that said, what does God say? So the Torah says in Achrei, I forgot the kapitel Chavhei, I forget what kapitel exactly, Yudches, something like that. I don't know the pasuk about Peh. I mean the place in this. Some people are experts exactly what pasuk it is. We read Yom Kippur. So it says there that a man shall not be with another man like a woman. And it's called a teyeva, means an aberration, an abomination. That's the translation. And there's consequences. Just like there are consequences that a man should not be with his wife when she's a nida. I'm not comparing the two. I'm just saying that there are rules. And I wanted to make the point that it's not just homosexuality. There's rules about sexuality, period. There's a whole halachas, hundreds and hundreds of laws. So now we have this pasuk. What do we do with this pasuk in a shul like this? What do we do with this pasuk? So there are three options. This is how I spoke. I said, option number one is you said, look, you know what? I can't accept this pasuk. So though I believe in God and I believe in the Torah and I believe in everything else, but this pasuk does not make sense to me because I'm naturally gay. So the pasuk can't be speaking to me. So there's something wrong. This pasuk I can't accept. So in other words, I could accept the whole Torah, but not this verse. We all know the problem with that is because then we're choosing and picking. And what happens if another person doesn't like the pasuk that says you shouldn't eat shrimp? I mean, is it up to us? That's option one. Option two is you could say, you know what, maybe there's a different way to read the pasuk. Maybe we have to interpret it properly. The fact is there are many people that consider themselves naturally gay, meaning they didn't choose it. Just like you can't change the color of your eyes, you can't change whether you're gay or not. So you have to say the pasuk, and the Eibishter created human beings. So you have to say the pasuk means something that, and many people choose a path. Maybe the pasuk means literally exactly like a sexual act, like a woman. Maybe it doesn't matter that you could have a relationship, but maybe it's not exactly like man and woman, and so on, or other interpretations that different people have come up with. And the third option is that this pasuk proves that the whole Torah is you could throw out. Because if this pasuk doesn't fit my life, so what the rest is also shows me that the rest is also not necessarily valuable. Or fourth option, which I know people have, that you know what, I accept the Torah, I accept this pasuk, and and I don't know what to do about it. Some people will say, listen, so I give in to my Yetzer Hara, and even though the pasuk, there's a lot of pasukim we don't follow. There are people who don't follow Avos Yisrael. It's a pasuk also of Haftarech Kamecha. So since we don't follow Haftarech Kamecha, I also don't follow this pasuk. Or I try my best. I tried my best to be celibate for a long period of time. It didn't work. So I said, these are the options. So I'm laying them out because you have to make a decision. Now, obviously, if you're going to say that since your sexual appetites or your sexual urges, so to speak, tell you to be gay, and the pasuk says otherwise, since you're not objective, obviously the pasuk doesn't sit well with you. You have no problem with kosher. You have no problem with Shabbos. So you have to be honest people here. I'm here to tell you that God created the world, and the way God said to be sexual is the healthiest way to be so. How you're going to work it out, that's going to be your challenge. I know that I don't expect anyone here to going to change their position because of what I just said. But I did want to present in a Torah-dik way the context of all of this. This was more or less what I said. A little more details here and there. So let me tell you what the reaction was. Generally speaking, it was extremely positive. As a matter of fact, you won't believe this, I got a standing ovation. Not from all of them, from around 3/4. They actually applauded what I said. And many of them told me afterwards, it's not because they agree with everything I said, but what you can't argue. One guy told me, he's very fiercely gay, very frum also in many ways, and he knows Torah. He says, how could anyone argue with what you said? You did present the facts according to Torah. Now, some people may not accept Torah. Some people don't accept God. But you didn't do anything here that was offensive. You didn't come and say, you guys are all bad people. You presented, just like you may have presented Hilchos Shabbos to, this is what he told me, to people who don't keep Shabbos. You're not telling them go keep Shabbos. You're telling them God, who created the world, said that every seventh day you should rest. Anyway, that was the general reaction. I cannot tell you afterwards how many people have communicated with me till this day. I'm talking now over 15 years ago. Till this day, they still communicate with me because they all struggle in different ways. They found in me a person they can talk to and confide in and trust. That even though I have a position, and I did not in any way I did not in any way compromise the position, but I did not personalize it so they can talk to someone like that. So that created a relationship that I can tell you right now, people that I know that are no longer gay, or they may still have gay tendencies, but they are learning how to deal with it. The point I want to bring out here's one of the most controversial topics today on earth, and everyone avoids it. Let's be honest. Shluchim will not talk about it because it's very politically incorrect to even suggest something. But if you talk about it the right way, you can talk about even that. I'm not saying any of you should go now and accept a speaking invitation to a gay community. I don't know if you'll be able to manage that. And I'm not saying this to toot my horn. I do have experience and I have done this, so I know how to do it. But the point I want to make is that you can take any controversial topic, and I can mention a few others, which I hope with time I'll mention now, that are hot potatoes. For example, the 3-4 topics that nobody talks about is this one, gay. Number 2 is the Palestinians. That's the second one. The third one is obviously Trump and that. I don't know if it's still a competition, but yeah, that was also an off-limits topic. And what other one? Maybe global warming or something like that, but that's not as hot potato like this. Why don't they talk about it? I have my brother-in-law in the Upper East Side, Rabbi Krasniansky. He's a Kanoi. He speaks, he doesn't filter what he says. He told me half his shul has already left him because he has stopped talking about certain topics. I said, why'd you stop? You're such a, hot, he's very, you have to say it the way it is. He says, because I see it's not having a teyelis. Just to say my position is not the Indian. The Indian is the one who have ashpah on people. My point that I'm making here is we're not talking about compromise. We're not talking about becoming liberals and suddenly changing our positions because it's not convenient and so on and so forth. It's about how to communicate. And as I said last week, the kavanah is one and one only. The Rebbe said this hundreds of times. I personally heard. It's not negay what your kavanah is. It's negay what the listener is going away with, how they heard you. If you can have the best kavanahs and l'shem shamayim and all good zachem, but if the listener did not understand what you said and they get either turned off from Yiddishkeit or they're just confused, you didn't accomplish anything. What'd you do? You were able to get off your chest your feelings. And it's a very difficult thing to do. Trust me, there are times I'm with an audience or with an individual and they make my blood boil. I really want to bang a stick over the guy's head. I don't mean the gashmis. I'm not violent, but if you know what I mean, they infuriate you. But you know what? You have responsibility. The Rebbe said, you're the mashpia. You have to think for two people. It would be like having a child who's behaving in a very obnoxious way. The ways you have to figure out how to communicate and get the child back to the right path here. So my goal here was not to come to tell them what to do. My goal wasn't even to change their mind, to be honest. I wanted them to hear a pleasant approach to a topic that they cannot listen to. And I must say I was successful. That was my goal. So that at least they planted in their seed that, you know what, there are people up Pitera that can talk, I can have a conversation with, and it's going to be a normal conversation. Not personalizing it. That's a big, big thing. Now, trust me, let me tell you the other side of it. There were people who came over to me who were very angry. They said, you're the worst of them all, one guy told me. You know why? Because you package it in such a nice way. These guys that come out and they say we're anti-gay and they protest, so we can fight with them. And but you're speaking like you're our friend. But what you're saying, it undermines everything we stand for. There was guys that told me this. And one of them was actually a leader in the gay community. And I said to him, you know what? I see that as a compliment, not as an insult, because I didn't come with any hidden agenda. I really am telling you. You think, one second, you think, and I don't have, let's say, a taiva? If a man has a taiva for a woman that's not his wife, you think there are no men that have such a taiva? But there's a taiva, and it tells you that you don't follow all your desires. We all have challenges. You think I'm different than you? I may not have gay issues, That's not my, but she says it's not a taiva. We're wired this way. We're not attracted to women. We're attracted to men. So the Rebbe has letters about that as well. But I don't even want to go into the debate about it. The Rebbe actually writes, the Rebbe doesn't say that it's false, that everyone who's gay, tendencies, they're not born that way. The Rebbe says, even if you're naturally that way, there's a Torah. It tells you how to curb your... A lot of things are natural to us. If we didn't have any chinuch, no problem. I want to take someone's thing, but the Torah tells us not to. This doesn't mean that it's not natural. It means that's why we're here. Now, I'm not suggesting this is an easy topic because I just recently had a couple that they call themselves gay, both religious, and they found a way to interpret that pasuk that works for them. Fine, I'm not going to get into that. And they're telling me, this is what they say to me. They say, look, I lived my whole life. I wanted to marry a woman. I married someone. I had children. And we had to divorce because there was just no relationship. I don't belong with a woman, he told me. So he says, so for years, I just did not have any intimacy altogether, which you could say is murder because a new human being needs to be intimate. So he says, and I suffer from that. So what does God want? If the God created the world and the sexuality this way, he doesn't want you to be with someone that you're drawn to, which is a male, same gender. So what are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to do? If you're not even aroused, you're not even stimulated by a woman. So what does God want? We know the Eibishter doesn't ask us to do so. If the Eibishter, for example, said it's a mitzvah to fast for 7 days in a row, it's not shaykh. A human being can't fast for 7 days in a row. Al pi Torah, al pi nature. So the Torah cannot ask us to do something that's impossible. For the Torah to ask a person to be celibate, which means no sexuality at all, is not shaykh because it's the nature of a human being. You could ask a person, as the Rebbe says, to jump down from a roof, but you can't ask them to jump up 20 feet. It's not shaykh. So this is a good question, right? The Rebbe has a letter where he answers this question. It's a 3-page letter written to someone who writes to the Rebbe that he considers himself gay. And he's asking the Rebbe for advice. And the Rebbe addresses this, and he says an interesting answer the Rebbe gives, which I shared actually in that Beis Simchas Torah. I don't know if they appreciated it or not, but I definitely shared it. The Rebbe says that the mere fact that the Eibishter gave you such an nisayon, he doesn't say it's not an nisayon. The Rebbe doesn't say it's like the Rebbe says, like for example, about Chatas Nurim, Hes Chadas, think about good things and don't focus. The Rebbe does not say that don't focus. The Rebbe acknowledges it's a nisayon, a big nisayon. The Rebbe says, if the Eibishter gave you a nisayon of this nature, it means you have some deeper keiches that can only be revealed by fighting this nisayon. So the mere fact that you have it means there's something that has to be revealed in you that you would not have revealed had you not had this nisayon. That's what the Rebbe tells him, basically. So it's an interesting answer. It means that this milchama, that a person who has such an atiyah is a very unique milchama, but it's going to make him a better person if he knows how to address it. I didn't have an answer for this guy, this frum guy. Like, why would God put me through this? I told him the answer from the Rebbe. I said, that's all I can say. I can't tell you why you were chosen to have such a nisayon. Obviously, if I had it my way, I'd pray for you. You shouldn't have this test, but you do. So my point that I'm making here is I'm not coming here with quick solutions and fixes. We have a dilemma here. There's a very big issue in this country. But I will say this, and I didn't say it to the large group for many reasons, but I say it sometimes to smaller groups. I said the challenge we have today, it's fine, it's all right, as long as it's not pitch black. People make a big mistake. It's not a challenge of gay sexuality. It's a challenge of, in general, sexuality. You think, for example, that people don't have sanctity in marriage. People are cheating on each other. They're not loyal. There's betrayals. There's all kinds of infidelity. You just watch any show on television or any media. There's no sanctity b'chlal to say. Forget about gay. And between men and women, it's a helik. The whole thing has become a problem. Sexual identity is the issue. And it's important to point that out in the communication with this. I speak very often to media people, and they ask me, I said, the issue is not, homosexuality is a symptom of, in general, people don't even know what God wants of us in our lives. If you knew what God wanted, all those assumptions I said before, the axioms, the whole thing changes. Now, this is critical for you guys. You must know this because you're going to face this issue. I don't mean personally, chas v'shalom. You're going to face it. You're going to meet people, and you have to know how to speak about this. You can't just say, I don't know what to say. Torah forbids it. I have nothing more to say. You have to know how to address it, because the real issue at the heart really is that the children of this generation have to be taught what is a healthy relationship. I'm not even getting into same gender, not same gender. I'm talking about what is a healthy relationship. What does the Eibishter want from a human being who also has a sexual identity and has desires? And when they reach a certain age, puberty, their hormones start flowing. What does he want from that? We do as Bochrim, we were not taught in yeshiva, and that's another discussion which I don't have time for now. Is do we discuss this? Do we not? Many mashpiyim felt that you don't talk about this. You bring is deiche harbe cheshech. Learn Chassidus, learn Torah, and b'meilek push. On the other hand, you look around. One second, a lot of Bochrim will tell you, no, I'm struggling with issues of Chatas Nurim, and no one talks about it, so I feel guilty. I come to my own conclusions, and I'm not necessarily healthy in that regard. And then we have all the other magafas that grow out of that, including porn, etc., etc. So we're not just dealing here with some limited homosexuality issue. You're dealing with a whole sexuality issue. So I'm just pointing out that if you think about it in a more sophisticated and broader way, you see this is a topic that needs to be addressed on many, many angles. We talked before about Shalom Bayis. I remember once I was by Rabbi Marlow, and I asked him something about, I was dealing with a couple. So he said to me, is wegen Geld or wegen issues, minus, basically relationship. So I told him there's only two things. He said, ich hab noch kein gesehen, a dritte Sache. It's either sexuality or money. So I said to him, 1 second, there's many different, he says, no, they don't talk about it. But it comes down to those two things. That's what he told me. So I thought he was a little simplistic, but then I got a little older, and I thought maybe he may have a good point. Here we go. The point I'm making here is that I hope to talk about this more, and I will, because it's not just about how to communicate about it, it's also how to understand it. So maybe we'll talk about that next week. That I'm sure going to get a bigger audience. We'll talk about the Kabbalah of intimacy. How about that?
Is it in your question?
What?
Just wondering, based on the quotes on whatever does mention sometimes that if someone comes up to you and asks you something which isn't connected to your shlichus, instead of answering, you can just tell them stop bothering me, right?
I think you have to put it in context. What does that mean?
Okay, it might have been Yehudi, but it looked like there was this idea of that if it's not directly what's related to you.
No. First of all, even me, Yehudi, we could talk about that sikh. It's not so simple as people think. You think the Rebbe changed his position about Gir Kalacha?
Not change position, but if I'm a shliach here, and someone asks me something.
And what about before Mem Test? One sikh among 40 years.
This context, if this is something that
I never heard such a thing. The Rebbe said to not talk about it.
That's what it looks. No, it looks like you can get the impression from there that anything.
No, first of all, even about me, Yehudi, I think you got the wrong impression, and definitely not to Milsa, Madame Milsa. Because of that, if someone comes to you and talks to you about Shabbos or Kashrus or sexuality, you should tell them let's not talk about it. I don't even know.
Oh, it might have to be evaluated on a case-to-case basis.
That sikha should not be used, in my opinion, as a directive for anything, really. The Rebbe did not give a Hayra there that tells us how not to talk about things. What?
Yeah, it looked like very Hayra.
Well, you have to understand the reka, as they say, the background behind it. Let me ask you something. For years, I remember my teenage years, every Shabbos the Rebbe would yell about me, Yehudi. So tell me, what happened? What happened? Avraham Hashem decided to become Rebbe? What are you saying exactly? What happened? The Rebbe suddenly changed? So first find out why.
I think that...
Now, you don't know the answer to that. You can't go bring a sikha if you don't know what the background behind that sikha is.
Okay, I think it was kind of a lost case by then, right?
No, that's the way it's said in the words. It's not what the Rebbe said. The Rebbe said, mit Geld. Look, I did research what behind that sikha. I think it was
affecting funding from federations or something, the Federation of America.
I just point out one thing. Would the Rebbe ever, because halacha is not comfortable for some people, would the Rebbe change his position? You ever hear the Rebbe ever?
Not change, given that you in America shouldn't be talking about it.
Okay, so then based on that, we can say don't talk about anything because it may make the famous joke. Don't talk about Judaism.
Yeah.
That's what you think the Rebbe is saying. Are you kidding me?
No, more like something they're not going to change the behavior, maybe.
Oh, really? That's what you've heard? I'm very surprised someone would say that. Anyway, let me put it to you just for the record. I absolutely do not accept that for 1 second. What? Because so then basically anything. Let's say a guy wants to get intermarried, and you may merachik him if he doesn't want. If you talk about it, what are you going to do then? You shouldn't tell him.
It looks like, I think a lot of people don't care.
I'm asking you. You think that's what the Rebbe is saying?
No, but it's like anything that's like a broad political thing, like
But we're talking about Torah here, halacha.
But it's not your job, so you're not there.
So I asked you a question. If a guy wants to hear about Shabbos, but he doesn't want to hear that you're not allowed to be Mechal Shabbos, you should say, let's not talk about it.
No, Shabbos is a practical thing. That's for him personally. Something that.
And what about Gir Kalocha? If a guy wants to convert to conservative Judaism or halacha, should you also not talk about it because it's uncalled? I know. Anyway, I will say this. I will absolutely tell you unequivocally to take that sikh and try to apply what you're saying is to me a gamri, a distortion of the Rebbe from beginning to end. I don't mean it personal. Anyone that says that to me is like I'm appalled. That the Rebbe said bekarvel nater. He never said to change something in Torah because it's inconvenient.
No, that's that. It's like let's not talk about it. Tell me that.
Okay, so based on that, you can basically anything that's a little controversial, don't talk about. Intermarriage is controversial. So should you try to be mashpia on someone to be a shemitay mitzvah if it's controversial? Ask your question.
They never polarizing it.
No, that's what you're doing. You're saying taking the Rebbe said that if it's you can't do anything about it anyway, or may create controversy, you shouldn't talk about it.
Okay, so what's talking about?
You have to know how to talk about it. That's the vart.
That's what it said.
Anyway, are you telling me you're going to take one sikha, and with that, are you disregarding hundreds of sikhs that the Rebbe discussed this issue? Why don't you quote other sikhs that seem to contradict what you're saying? Hundreds of sikhs that Rebbe said. No, so I'm answering you. You took one sikha, and you're basically completely ignoring hundreds of sikhs that are otherwise.
Like consistently after that, it really resurfaced. That's why.
First of all, the Rebbe talked about me Yehudi specifically there, correct? Did he say from this?
He didn't say the word me Yehudi. It was only in telephone or something.
So how do you know what he's talking about then?
It looks like a general.
Anyway, I just told you I stand by what I said. Absolutely no, I don't care. Where were you makabel this?
No, I want to hear. I'm not coming to I want to
No, but you come to a conclusion, and everything I say you don't accept. I totally disagree.
I want to hear.
Do you hear me? That I totally disagree. You're supposed to talk about everything with Torah mitzvahs. You just have to know how to talk about it. What are you saying exactly? I'm not sure what you're.
No, I don't actually.
That's not what he's asking me. You want to know how to type that sikha? That's what you want to address?
I guess like that, yeah.
So then it's a specific question. So we'll look at the sikha and I'll talk about it another week. I'm talking about the Rebbe's methodology about talking about Yiddishkeit. That's what I thought he's asking me. You want to know pshat in a sikha?
It
Fine.
looks like a pretty clear thing that's.
And I say no. I totally disagree. You don't accept that. You keep telling me, you keep going back to your position, but you want to hear. But you're not hearing. I disagree with that position.
Because I want to hear how. I want to see how.
Well, I put the challenge to you. Where do you have the right to take one sikha and change the Rebbe's approach to thousands of things? Where he always spoke that we're not reform and we're not conservative. And we do talk about Torah and halacha. And we are adamant about it. And more importantly, did you read the sikhs in Tafshin Lamed Aleph and Lamed Beis and Lamed Gimel about Mi Yehudi? Did you ever hear those sikhs?
Yeah.
So the Rebbe is saying all those were a mistake? Let me ask you, that's how you understand Chavdal Tevis Memtes?
No, it looks like at that point it had a chance to be taken care of.
So let's say, since when? Is it the chance? So the Rebbe would stop fighting for something since there may not be a chance to win? Is that how you decide
Or it
how?
has other consequences that are more priority for us.
But this is all your speculation.
Not just my speculation, but
Yeah, it's your speculation. Wait. The Rebbe spoke tens and tens of sikhs about Mi Yehudi. He said it should be spoken about by weddings
yeah.
and in public. So I'm asking you, this Rebbe changed his position. He said, Toisi?
No, at that point that was the right thing to do. At this point,
So explain to me how. It's a halachic issue. Gir kalacha is not the Rebbe's position. It's a halacha. Why would the Rebbe suddenly come to a Gir kalacha that he saw as being such a yesed in Yiddishkeit and wanted everyone to talk about it, and suddenly one sikh say no? Can you explain that?
because we have other priorities here.
No, but you have an explanation for that?
That's what it seems like. No?
No, what you see to you, so maybe you're wrong. Maybe that's not what the Rebbe said. How do you,
I thought I was basing it off.
I asked you a question. Is it possible that you don't understand what the Rebbe said?
Yes, definitely.
That's what I'm suggesting to you.
Okay.
Because then if the Rebbe spoke about it for so long, a certain way, and then suddenly there's that, Maybe you're not understanding what the Rebbe is saying.
I was looking at it based on the words over there, that like, it was like, they should be better.
Well, are we going in circles again? So how do you explain the hundreds of sikhs that were otherwise? How do you explain that?
I told you the way I understood it, that it was at that point it was more able to be done. without-
So this is how you want, but maybe you're not understanding it.
Okay, so what is the?
So we'll talk about it another time. Now is not the time. But first accept that you may not understand it.
Okay.
Let's start with that. Do you think it's possible, for example, that Rebbe can say that the Deir Shvi that he said, maybe something's changed? Why can't you use your logic on that? A lot of people say that. Tell me, what's your argument against that? Up to Gimel Tammuz, it seemed possible. It changed. The Matzah changed.
Please, like, I feel like we took it a lot further than.
No, I'm asking you a question. Why can't you say that? Tell me, what's your argument against?
I really never meant that you go this direction.
No, but I'm still asking you the question. Why can't you make that argument? That maybe something's changed.
Okay.
No, I'm asking, why would you say that's possible? Things changed?
If that would say that it changed.
No, you said from Chavdal Tevis, you can assume other things also may be changed.
No, I think there was more speaking about communication, what to tell people. I wasn't talking about changing values. That was the point I wanted to bring out from there, not more about communication. That's what I was taking from there.
Well, I think communication is all about how you say it. Even before Chavdal Tevis, you always had to speak about Mi Yehudi, also B'dar Keneya. The Rebbe never said to go with knives and gvuras. That was never an option. So communication was always a sensitive one. So what changed? Anyway, we'll talk about it another time. It's not relevant to this discussion.
Even like a job, communicate that. Like I understand in America, I shouldn't have mentioned the word. I'm not listening with you.
And to me, it doesn't seem that way. So just be aware of that. Sure.